My name's Colin Urwin, and I'm a storyteller from the Glens of Antrim. And I've been working through the Ballycastle Museum on a project called Museums Tell Stories. And I was lucky enough to get access to the Sam Henry collection. And I was given this photocopy of an article that Sam Henry wrote in a local newspaper. He was given this stone, a hagstone. Now, a hagstone is a naturally occurring stone with a hole through it. It hasn't been manufactured by human hand. And this stone was found in the hand of someone who was buried 40 centuries ago up near Mount Sandal on the north coast. And Sam writes at great length here about the significance of hagstones and stones in general in the psyche of our ancient ancestors. And it has inspired a story which I'm going to tell you a very foreshortened version of. I want to tell you about a young man called Fergus Moore. He was the son of a humble clansman. And as his name suggests, he was large of stature and strong of limb. Now, in those ancient days, before the Tuatha De Danann brought bronze and iron blades to Ireland, conflict swept across the land like the ebb and flow of the tide. Young men, when they came of age, had to become warriors. And of course, when Fergus Moore came of age, he stood ready to take his place among his fellows. Well, some men dreaded the thought of becoming a warrior. They didn't want to leave the place, their home place where they had gathered hazelnuts in the woods or speared salmon in the river. The thought of never seeing a loved one again haunted their every dream. And yet others relished in the thought of glory. They wanted their heroic deeds to be told time and again around the flickering campfires to ardent ears down through the generations. But Fergus Moore, he neither shrunk from nor delighted in the idea of becoming a warrior. It was just something that had to be brave. If he'd been given the choice, he would have stayed at home and married the young woman to whom he had been betrothed. He had great ideas about becoming a faithful husband and fathering many sons and daughters, but of course, so had many other young warriors before him. Fergus Moore was a serious young man, and any undertaking that he encountered, he treated it with wholeheartedly, and any question that came to his mind was considered deeply. And you see, in those days, warriors, when they entered the field of battle, they had to throw a stone onto a heap. And when the battle was over, if they survived, they would retrieve the stone. And by such means, a tally was kept of those warriors lost that day. Well, of course, when Fergus Moore was told to fetch himself a tally stone, he didn't just bend down and pick up the first pebble that came to hand. He walked across the beach where his clansmen were encamped, searching for the perfect stone. He lifted them, weighed them, and pored over them. And then he would try them for fit in his hand. He held their cold, smooth surfaces against his skin, but none seemed to appeal to him, not entirely anyway. Well, the elder warriors began to nudge each other as they watched his antics. And then, eventually, Fergus Moore found a stone that seized his attention. It was much bigger than the egg-sized pebbles that the warriors favoured. His was a cobblestone, bigger than his big fist. He held the stone, tossed it in the air, and he carried it back to where the men were feasting on shellfish and mead before they went to battle. And when they saw him coming with his huge stone, they began to tease him about it. Hey, Fergus, do you think that stone's big enough that you have there? Maybe some of us could lend you a hand and we could get a bigger one. Maybe we could yoke an ox to a cart. Of course, there were balls of laughter. But Fergus Moore, he took their mockery with his usual good grace. And then he lifted the stone and he held it up and he put it to his eye. And everyone could see that there was a hole right through the core of that stone, the size of a man's finger. And everyone fell silent, for they knew that Fergus Moore had found a hagstone, a rare and much sought after thing. Because everyone knew that hagstones had the power to see into the future. A wise man or a spy wife could peer through that hole and see a time and a place beyond the here and now. And as Fergus Moore looked through the hole in his stone, suddenly he could foresee the suffering and the violence that was to come. But at the same time, he was gripped by a powerful sense that told him that he would not be slain in battle. Well, it was a powerful, treasured talisman that could ease a warrior's fear and maybe even give him some protection from the other world. But that day, Fergus Moore found his talisman. He found his lucky charm on that beach. And big and heavy as it was, he carried it everywhere with him. And when he was going into battle, he left his hagstone on the heap. And everyone knew to whom it belonged. They called it Cloch Moor Fergusa, Big Fergus's stone. Well, Fergus Moore survived the battle that day, when a dozen more of his clansmen did not. He returned home to marry that young woman to whom he had been betrothed, and they started their family. And he survived many battles and skirmishes in the years that came. And when he held that stone up and looked through it into the future, a voice deep within him spoke of old age. His comrades on the field of battle could sense his power. They rallied about him. They began to shield him. Some of them even laid down their lives that Fergus Moore might carry on the fight. And at night time, round the fires, they would beg Fergus Moore to peer through his hagstone, their fortunes to foretell. And he always found a gentle way to raise their spirits and allay their fears. In time, Fergus Moore became their clan chief, and he lived to be a very old and wise leader. And when he eventually died, they buried him with great sorrow and dignity. They raised a huge flat stone and they laid it over uprights that had been heaved into place. And in that rude chamber, they laid his body. And around it, they placed the things that had defined Fergus Moore in life. And over that tomb, they built a cairn of white tally stones to tell the guardians of the other world that the warrior whose spirit came to them was their much loved and lamented chieftain, Fergus Moore. Many centuries have passed since then, and the cairn has disappeared. All that remains of Fergus Moore's tomb are a few weather-beaten, standing stones aslant on a lonely hillside overlooking the Sea of Moyle. His dust has long since blown away, and not a single word written down chronicles his life or time. But his story was told, and in that shallow earth, his most cherished possession, his hagstone, endured. Cloch Mór Fergusa, Big Fergus's stone. Well, throughout this project, we've been doing some folk singing as well, of course, as storytelling. And one of the resources that we've been using is Sam Henry's Songs of the People. And it's a great collection of songs that Sam collected along the north coast and down through the Glens of Antrim over many years. And I want to sing you at least a verse of one of the songs from it. It's probably my favourite, and the favourite of so many. And it's often sung at the end of the evening. And of course, you'll all know it, I'm sure, as The Parting Glass. And this version, collected in 1938 by Sam, is considered to be the County Antrim version. A man may drink and not be drunk. A man may fight and not be slain. A man may court a pretty girl and perhaps be welcome back again. And as it has so ordered been, what is once past can be recalled. So fill to me the parting glass. Good night and joy be with you.